Have you ever felt too small to make a difference? This is the story of a young woman who risked everything, her comfort, her crown, even her life to save her people. Her name was Esther, and her courage changed history.
The story begins in the grand city of Susa, capital of the mighty Persian Empire. The king, Xerxes, ruled over 127 provinces, powerful, wealthy, and proud. One day, the king threw a massive party to show off his riches. The celebration lasted for months. But when the king called for his queen, Vashti, to come and display her beauty before the guests, she refused. The king was furious. His advisors warned, if the queen disobeys, other wives will do the same. So Vashti was banished from the palace. Soon after, servants searched the entire empire for the most beautiful young women to bring to the palace so the king could choose a new queen. Among them was a young Jewish woman named Esther, an orphan raised by her wise cousin Mordecai. Mordecai told her, "Esther, remember, don't tell anyone you're a Jew. Be humble, be wise. God may have a reason for this." Esther listened and entered the palace. She found favor with everyone, even the palace officials. When she finally stood before King Xerxes, he was captivated by her grace and kindness. He placed the royal crown upon her head and declared, "You will be queen in Vashti's place." From orphan to queen, Esther's life had changed forever, but God was only beginning his plan. Not long after Esther became queen, the king promoted a man named Haman. Proud and cruel, Haman demanded that everyone bow before him. But Mordecai refused, saying, "I will bow only to the Lord my God." Haman burned with anger. Learning that Mordecai was a Jew, he plotted not just to punish Mordecai, but to destroy all Jews in the kingdom. He went to the king with deceitful words. "Your Majesty, there is a certain people who live differently from others. They don't follow your laws. It's not in your best interest to let them remain. Allow me to remove them." Without realizing what he'd agreed to, King Xerxes gave Haman his royal seal. A decree went out on a certain day. Every Jew, man, woman, and child, was to be destroyed. When Mordecai heard the news, he tore his clothes and sat in the city gate covered in ashes, weeping. Word reached Queen Esther. Concerned, she sent a servant to find out what was wrong. Mordecai's message came back. "Haman has convinced the king to destroy our people. Esther, you must speak to the king and plead for us." But Esther hesitated. "I can't. Everyone knows the law. If anyone approaches the king without being invited, they'll be put to death unless he raises his golden scepter. And he hasn't called me in 30 days. Mordecai replied, "Don't think because you're in the palace you'll escape. If you stay silent, help will come from somewhere else. But who knows? Maybe you were made queen for such a time as this." Those words pierced Esther's heart. She knew what she had to do. "Go and gather all the Jews in the city, fast and pray for me for 3 days. My maids and I will do the same. Then I'll go to the king, even if it means I die." After 3 days of fasting and prayer, Esther put on her royal robes and entered the king's hall. Guards froze. Everyone held their breath. If the king refused her, she would die. Then the king smiled and extended his golden scepter. "What is it, Queen Esther? I'll give you anything you ask, even up to half my kingdom." Esther bowed and said, "If it pleases the king, come today with Haman to a banquet I've prepared." That night, the king and Haman attended the banquet. The king asked again, "What do you really want, Esther?" But she simply said, "Please come again tomorrow for another banquet. Then I'll tell you." Haman left the palace bursting with pride. But when he saw Mordecai still refusing to bow, his rage returned. He ordered a giant gallows built to hang Mordecai the next morning. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He asked for the royal records to be read to him. There he discovered that years earlier, Mordecai had once saved him from an assassination plot. Was he ever rewarded for this? The king asked. No, my lord, a servant replied. Just then, Haman entered the court, planning to ask permission to hang Mordecai. The king called out, Haman, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? Thinking the king meant him, Haman said, dress him in royal robes, place him on your horse, and have an official lead him through the city, shouting, this is what the king does for the man he honors. The king smiled and said, excellent. Go do exactly that for Mordecai the Jew. Haman's face fell, but he had no choice. He paraded Mordecai through the streets himself. That evening, at the second banquet, the king again asked, what is it you wish, Queen Esther? Esther took a deep breath. My king, please spare my life and the lives of my people. We have been sold to be destroyed. The one responsible is this wicked Haman. The king was shocked. He stormed out into the garden, furious. When he returned, he saw Haman falling on Esther's couch, begging for his life. Will he even assault the queen in my own palace? Shouted the king. At once, the guards covered Haman's face. One of them said, Your Majesty, there's a gallows Haman built to hang Mordecai. Then hang him on it, ordered the king. And just like that, the one who planned to destroy the Jews was destroyed by his own plan. The king gave Haman's estate to Esther and made Mordecai the new royal advisor. A new decree went out allowing the Jews to defend themselves, and they were saved. Every year, the Jewish people still celebrate this miracle as the Feast of Purim, a reminder that God can turn fear into courage and despair into deliverance. Esther's story teaches us that true courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in faith despite it. Sometimes God places us where we are for such a time as this. If this story encouraged you, share it with someone who needs hope today. And remember, you may be right where you are for such a time as this. Leave a comment with one word that describes how this story inspired you, and let's fill this space with faith and courage.